This happened back in the fall of 2011 when I was 17. I was in my last year of high school in a tiny dead-end town called Brookvale. You know the kind of place. One gas station, 3 churches, and absolutely nothing to do unless you like cows or bonfires. Back then, Friday night football games were the event. The entire town showed up. Parents, kids, random old folks who didn't even have grandkids in school. And honestly, I didn't even like football, but it was something to do, so that Friday, I was sitting in a dumb elective class, digital design, which was basically just an excuse to scroll through YouTube, with my cousin Eli. He and I had been close since we were kids. We were the kind of cousins who felt more like brothers. Sitting behind us were 2 girls we hung out with a lot, Mia and Zoe. Eli leaned over and said, "Yo, you think Mia and Zoe want to hit the game tonight?" "Probably," I said, shrugging. Eli turned around, flashed that grin he always used when he was about to charm someone, and asked them straight up. They were down, obviously. Everyone was going. After school, Eli dropped me off at home, and we agreed to meet up around 7. He picked me up later. We swung by to get Mia and Zoe, and then headed toward the high school. Now, here's where it starts getting weird. Instead of parking in the front lot like normal people, Eli pulled around to the back, the side that bordered the woods. There was a busted-up chain-link fence back there and a big overgrown patch where kids would sneak off to drink or smoke after games. Eli pulled out 2 tall cans from under his seat. "Still got these from last week, 4 Loco. The original kind. The kind that made you feel like your brain was on a roller coaster." We poured them into old Gatorade bottles, trying to be slick, and headed toward the bleachers. The sun was already going down, casting that deep orange glow across the field. By halftime, it was dark. By the 4th quarter, our team was losing bad. People started clearing out early, but we stayed, still sipping on the drinks, not really paying attention to the game. After the final whistle, the field emptied fast. The players jogged off, the lights buzzed, and one by one, the crowd disappeared. Within 10 minutes, it was like the place had been abandoned. Eli stood up and stretched. "Want to go lie in the field for a bit?" We all walked down and laid back on the grass. It was quiet, peaceful even. You could hear crickets, the distant hum of the lights, and the occasional clang of the metal bleachers creaking in the wind. Then Eli, of course, had another idea. "Hey, let's go in the woods." Mia immediately sat up. "Are you serious?" Zoe crossed her arms. "That place is creepy." Eli just grinned. "Exactly." The girls hesitated, but Eli and I got up and ran toward the woods anyway, figuring they'd follow once they got too freaked out being alone. Sure enough, they did. We ducked under the fence. There was a part near the edge where the links were bent just enough to crawl through. I remember the air changing as soon as we stepped into the trees. It was cooler still, and it smelled like wet dirt and pine needles. There was a narrow little trail that led down a small hill. Eli and I started walking faster, and then we ran just to mess with the girls. They called after us, but we didn't answer. We hid behind a couple of thick tree trunks and waited, and then something changed. Eli stopped laughing and nudged me. Look, at first I didn't see anything. Then I noticed what he meant. Between 2 trees, not more than 20 feet away, stood this figure. It was tall, really tall. At first I thought it was someone in a long black coat. But it wasn't a coat. It was like the figure itself was made of shadow. The only reason we could see it at all was because the moonlight was slicing through the trees, just enough to give it shape. Then it spoke. "You kids shouldn't be in here." It was a woman's voice, calm but not warm, not friendly, cold actually. We froze. Neither of us moved. The figure didn't either, not at first. But then it started getting closer, only we didn't hear any footsteps. No leaves crunching. No branches breaking. Nothing. Just silence. And still it got closer. That was all we needed. We turned and ran. Full speed. We didn't care what direction. We shouted for the girls and found them just a few feet up the hill. "Run!" Eli screamed. We all sprinted back through the broken fence and didn't stop until we were inside Eli's car with the doors locked. We sat there breathing hard, shaking. Mia asked, "What happened? Who was that?" Eli looked at me and said, "You saw it too, right?" I nodded. If you hadn't, he said, I'd think I lost my mind. We watched the edge of the woods from the car for a long time, but nothing ever came out. The rest of the night we didn't talk much about it. We tried to push it out of our heads, but none of us really forgot Jump to Summer. I'd taken a job at Brookvale High as part of the custodial crew. It was the last summer before college, and I figured I'd earn some cash. There were only 4 of us working in the whole building. Mr. Granger and Ms. Lee, both old-school janitors who'd been there forever, me, and another student named Derek. One afternoon I was mowing the courtyard grass. It was hot, humid. I was sweating through my shirt when I looked up and saw someone standing at a second-floor window. It was a woman. She looked older, maybe in her 60s, short curly gray hair, but her face was hard to see because of the glare on the glass. I waved. She didn't wave back. She didn't even move, just stood there staring. I turned off the mower and ran inside. Found Mr. Granger in the boiler room. Hey, I said, trying not to sound crazy. There's someone upstairs, a woman. I saw her in the math wing window. He gave me a confused look but followed me upstairs. The hallway was dark. All the doors were shut. We checked every room, nothing. Mr. Granger said, Nobody's supposed to be here but us. Maybe drink some water, kid. But I knew what I saw. Later I was mopping the upstairs halls. I always brought a little Bluetooth speaker with me and played music while I worked. Then, through the music, I heard something, a voice, a woman's voice, young man, clear as day. I turned the music off and froze. The voice had come from behind me, or maybe from inside one of the rooms. I checked every classroom on that hallway. Nothing. Empty desks, empty chairs, not even the creak of a door, and still I felt it, that feeling when you know you're being watched. I ran downstairs again, told Mr. Granger. He came up with me this time. Again, nothing. But I wasn't imagining it. I remembered the voice in the woods. I remembered the shape, the way it moved or didn't, and suddenly it all clicked. It was the same voice, same tone, same calm, eerie sound. From that point on, I refused to clean the math hallway. Mr. Granger thought I was nuts, but he let me swap jobs with Derek. For the rest of that summer, I avoided that wing completely, and to this day, I swear there's something still in that school. Something watching. Something waiting. I don't care if nobody believes me. I know what I saw, and I'm never going back. This all started back in 2014 when I was 16, and in my second year at River Valley High. It was one of those weird schools where they randomly assign your lunch period, so you could go an entire year without seeing your friends during break. That year, the only people I had in my lunch slot were Jenna and Marcus. Good people, but not my closest. About 2 months into the school year, things got strange. It began one regular Tuesday morning in biology class. A new kid walked in looking kind of out of it, like he'd just woken up in a ditch. Our teacher, Mr. Ward, who always tried way too hard to be funny, made the poor guy introduce himself. "Tell us your name and your deal," he said, grinning like a game show host. The kid mumbled, "I'm Declan," that was it. Just his name. No "nice to meet you," no smile, just this flat, dead stare as he scanned the room. Mr. Ward laughed it off and told him to grab the empty seat in the back, right next to me. I remember how heavy his footsteps were as he walked over, like each step was a chore. He dropped into the chair beside me, didn't say anything at first. Then just as I went back to pretending to read my notes, he turned his head and said, "Hey." I looked over. Hey man, his face was kind of plain. Not ugly, not good looking. Just there. Pale skin, dark circles under his eyes like he hadn't slept in weeks, and this weird, thin, patchy beard that looked like it belonged on someone twice his age. But the creepiest part was how hard he stared. It's like he wasn't just looking at me, but into me. "I'm Declan," he repeated. "I'm Tyler," I said. "Cool name," he replied, grinning just a bit too wide. We got paired up for a lab project that day. I didn't really have a choice. I didn't know anyone else in the class well enough to bail on him. So whatever, we opened our laptops, and within 5 minutes I knew something was off. Declan's sense of humor was much strange. Not ha-ha strange, more like, Why did you just say that, Strange? He made jokes about slicing up frogs and putting them in people's lockers. At first I chuckled, just trying to be polite. But then he doubled down, saying stuff like, I bet you could hide a heart in someone's backpack and they wouldn't even notice. I laughed nervously. That's, dark. He just did this slow, raspy chuckle. It's only weird if you get caught. The whole period was like that. I kept glancing at the clock, wishing it would move faster. When class finally ended, he asked for my number so we could finish the project. I hesitated but gave it to him. What was I gonna do? Say no and deal with him getting angry? Later that day at lunch, Jenna and I were sitting at our usual table talking about this horror movie marathon we were planning for the weekend. Out of nowhere, I saw her eyes dart past me, then go wide. I turned around and sure enough, there was Declan dragging a chair over and sitting right beside me like he belonged there. What's up, buddy? He said, clapping me on the back. Jenna shot me a look like, do you know this dude? I smiled weakly. Hey man, the next 20 minutes were torture. Declan started talking nonstop. Weird stuff again. He went off about how he used to make voodoo dolls out of socks when he was bored, and how his old school couldn't handle his personality. He kept dropping creepy little lines like, don't you hate when people pretend to be your friend and then ghost you? And ever get the feeling someone's watching you even when you're alone? Every time Jenna tried to change the subject, he'd bring it back to something darker. Eventually, even she couldn't hide her discomfort. After lunch, she leaned over and whispered, that guy is not okay. I agreed. It got worse after school. I was walking home, just trying to enjoy the afternoon, when I got a text from an unknown number. I opened it, turn around, I froze. And yeah, like an idiot, I did it. There he was, Declan, running down the sidewalk toward me like we were long-lost brothers. He caught up, breathing way too heavily for someone who claimed to live just a few blocks away. You live around here? He asked. Yeah, about 10 minutes away. Same, he said. I'll walk with you. I didn't want to be rude, so I said sure. But then he asked if I wanted to knock out our assignment. Over a few beers, I blinked. Aren't we like 16? He grinned. Age is just a number. I tried to laugh it off. I've actually got plans with my friends. Oh yeah? He asked, what kind of plans? That's when I realized he wasn't just being nosy. He was probing, trying to figure out where I'd be later so he could tag along. I said, we're just hanging at Jenna's place, nothing major. Cool, I could come. I fumbled. Her mom's kind of strict about new people. He nodded slowly. Makes sense. Still, he kept walking with me all the way home. When we reached my place, I said, all right, see you later, man, and gave him a fist bump. He didn't leave right away. He stood at the edge of my driveway staring at the house. Eventually, he turned and walked off, but not before glancing back twice. That night, things got seriously creepy. Around 8 p.m., I got another text. Yo, what's going on in front of your house? Why is there a cop car? I jumped up and ran to the window. No cop car. No flashing lights. Just a still, dark street. Then I saw him, Declan, standing at the edge of my yard, arms folded, looking right at my window. I flung the door open. Dude, what are you doing? He laughed, like full-blown giggling. Got you. I didn't laugh. Why are you even here? I thought you said you were going to Jenna's. I was done playing nice. Yeah, in a bit. You don't want me to come, do you? He asked. I think you know the answer, I said flatly. Something in his expression changed. He looked hurt, but not in a normal way, in this eerie, twitchy way, like he wasn't used to people saying no. I gotta go inside, I said, and shut the door. A minute later, my phone buzzed. TF, bro, thought you were cool. I didn't respond. Then came another. You're just like the rest. I blocked his number and messaged my friends, telling them everything. We agreed to meet at Jenna's to hang out and get away from my house. I left around 9:30. Came back close to midnight. My parents were still out. My sister was probably with her boyfriend. House was empty, dark, quiet. I locked the door, went upstairs, and put on some YouTube videos to calm down. Then, the back doorbell rang. Yes, we have a doorbell back there. It makes a different sound from the front one. I figured maybe my sister forgot her key. I went downstairs and flipped on the back porch light. No one. I squinted through the glass. Still no one. I opened the inner door but kept the screen door locked. Hello? I called. Silence then. Skrrk. I heard the sound of a shoe dragging across the concrete just to the left of the door. I couldn't see anything, but someone was definitely there, just out of view. I slammed the door, locked it, and sprinted back upstairs. My phone started ringing. Declan. I let it ring. Then came the text. Come outside. I brought you something. My reply was short and shaky. I'm calling the police. He responded instantly. Okay, I'm leaving. I didn't believe him. I stayed up the rest of the night, lights on, a baseball bat beside my bed. I sent the screenshots to my parents, my friends, even my homeroom teacher. Turns out Declan had been kicked out of multiple schools before ours. For similar stuff. Following people, showing up at their houses, saying disturbing things. The school reached out to his parents. They pulled him out before Monday. Just like that, he was gone. No one ever saw Declan again. Not at school. Not around town. Not online. And you know what's worse? Every once in a while, I still get texts. No number, just messages like, remember me? I know where you live. You shouldn't have ignored me. I never reply. But sometimes late at night I still hear that skrrk sound outside my window. Like someone's dragging their foot slowly across the concrete, waiting for me to come out. Have you ever had one of those days where everything feels normal but something's just off? Like the air's a little too still or the shadows hang around a little longer than they should? Yeah. That was the day everything changed for me. It was early September, 2018. I had just turned 18, and it was the start of my final year of high school in a small, sleepy town called Pinefield, Vermont. Picture this: a quiet town where everybody knows everybody, and the school looks like it was built back when disco was still cool. We had one building for both middle and high school, with maybe a couple hundred students total. I'd lived there my whole life. Nothing big ever really happened in Pinefield. Until that year. Now, I wasn't exactly thrilled to be back at school. I'd had a rough junior year, and because of some credits I didn't finish, I was repeating senior year. So while most of my old classmates were off starting college, I was back in study hall with a bunch of underclassmen. Yay, right? Anyway, it was the first period, study hall. I walked into the classroom and immediately spotted someone I didn't recognize. Kind of rare around here. He was sitting alone at the far end of the room, wearing this faded green hoodie pulled halfway over his face, chewing on something that looked jerky. I'd never seen him before, and I thought I knew every face in this school. So naturally, I walked over. "Hey," I said. "You knew?" He looked up slowly. His eyes were this weird pale gray, kind of cloudy like foggy glass. He gave a half smile and said, "Yeah, I just moved here." "I'm Lucas." I introduced myself, Eli, and asked where he was from. He said something vague like, "We moved around a lot." I offered to show him around the school and he nodded, stuffing the jerky into his pocket. As we walked the halls, I noticed little things. Lucas didn't seem super interested in the school itself. He kept asking me questions, normal at first. Stuff like, "How long have you lived here? And what's the easiest class?" But then it got weird. "Where do you live exactly?" he asked. Like, "What street?" I blinked. I'm out on Pine Hollow Road." "What's the number?" he asked, looking too curious. I laughed awkwardly. "You FBI or something?" He didn't laugh, just stared at me. So I changed the subject and showed him where the cafeteria was. He didn't ask anything else for a while, but he kept glancing at me sideways like he was studying me. Before we split up, he asked, "You got Snap?" I hesitated. I didn't want to be rude, so I said sure and added him. His username was just strange, something like a Lucas Nowhere. The rest of the morning was pretty normal. But I couldn't stop thinking about how weird that conversation had been. And the way he looked at me, like I was something he was planning to unwrap later. Anyway, my last class that day was English. I walked in and noticed Lucas already there, sitting way in the back, still wearing that hoodie. There were only 9 of us in that class, basic level English, so it wasn't hard to spot him. He had a sandwich in his hand. And I'm telling you, it was revolting. The bread was damp. Something brown oozed out the side. He took a slow bite and stared right at me while chewing. I looked away. Class was about to start, and our teacher, Mr. Riley, was flipping through a copy of Mice and Men. I opened my book and pretended to read. A minute passed. Then I felt it again, Lucas's stare boring into the side of my face. I glanced over. He was still chewing, still staring. This time he lifted one hand and gestured slowly, beckoning me to come to him. I shook my head slightly and turned away. A moment later, my phone buzzed under the desk. Snapchat Lucas nowhere. Follow me, I typed back, and dude, we're in class. No reply. But a second later I saw him stand up and ask Mr. Riley to use the bathroom. He left the room without looking back. At first I told myself to ignore it. Just finish class and go home. But something itched at me. Curiosity, fear, maybe both. 5 minutes later I raised my hand. Bathroom? Mr. Riley waved me off without looking up. I stepped into the hallway. It was quiet. Too quiet, no voices, no footsteps. Then I saw him. Lucas was about 50 feet away, walking slowly down a side corridor most students never used. It led to some old locker rooms, maintenance closets, and the storage area. I followed him but kept my distance. I watched as he opened a plain gray door at the very end of the hall. It was the door to the basement. Nobody ever went down there. It was always locked, but Lucas opened it and slipped inside like it was no big deal. I stood there staring at the door. Something in me said don't. My palms were sweaty. My heart was loud in my ears. I thought about the following. I even reached for the doorknob, but I couldn't do it. I turned around and went back to class. When I sat down, I felt my phone buzz again. Lucas, nowhere. Why didn't you come down? Then a photo. It was pitch black, but the flash had lit up Lucas's face. He was in a narrow room with concrete walls, sitting on the basement floor eating that same disgusting sandwich. Another message came through. It's not too late. I didn't respond. I blocked him. That night after dinner, I was home alone. My parents were working late shifts and my little brother was at a sleepover. I tried to shake the weirdness off and focused on homework. By the time I was done, it was almost 11 p.m., and that's when I got another notification from Snapchat. Someone added me. The username? Why didn't you come down? Blocked. 2 minutes later, another request. Why did you block me? Blocked again. 30 seconds passed. Then another, this one was called "I Your House." Then, "I'm at your window." And then I heard it. Crash, glass shattering, somewhere downstairs. I jumped out of my chair, heart hammering. I grabbed my phone and called 911. The operator kept calm. Told me to lock the door and hide. I grabbed a baseball bat and ducked into the hallway closet, closing the door behind me. The house was dead, quite until I heard them, footsteps on the stairs. Slow, deliberate, creaking. With every step, I peeked through the slats of the closet door and saw him. Lucas, standing at the end of the hallway. He looked taller. His hoodie was soaked like he'd walked through a storm. His eyes had that same glassy fog, but this time they were locked right on the closet door. Then he smiled, a slow, crooked grin. I pressed back into the coats and shoes, holding my breath. He walked forward. His hand touched the doorknob. He opened the closet, but the light didn't work. It stayed dark. He stepped in, searching around. I crouched behind an old plastic tub. My phone buzzed softly in my pocket and I nearly screamed, but he didn't hear it. After a few seconds, he turned and walked back downstairs. Moments later, knock, 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 the front door. It was the police. I ran to them and explained everything. They checked the house. Lucas was gone. They found a broken window in the basement, but no sign of him. I showed them the messages. They said they'd try to track the accounts, but the usernames were already deleted. The next morning, I went to the principal's office and told him everything. He pulled up the student roster. No Lucas. No one by that name goes here, he said, confused. Are you sure you met him at school? We checked the security cameras, and there he was, Lucas, slipping in through a back door, walking the halls like he belonged. No backpack, no schedule, just blending in. That was the last anyone ever saw of him. Police never followed up. His accounts vanished. He didn't show up on any town records, enrollment forms. Nothing. I still live in Pinefield, and sometimes when I walk past that old gray basement door, I feel it again. That cold chill. That wrongness. I don't know who or what Lucas really was, but I know one thing. If I'd gone down into that basement, I don't think I'd be here to tell this story.